I am Councillor Kythren of the Galactic Diplomatic Assembly, and I have spent 43 standard cycles believing I understood courage. I have witnessed the Kalari stand firm against asteroid bombardments. I have seen the Mordishi negotiate with plasma rifles pressed against their throats. I have watched the Yenturi sacrifice their own limbs to save clutchmates from the void. But I had never, not once in my considerable career, witnessed anything like what that human did on Therasskan Prime. Let me be absolutely clear about something before I continue. When I say human, I mean it in the most technical sense. 2 arms, 2 legs, approximately 1.8 meters tall, soft skin that bruises if you look at it too aggressively, the kind of species that should have died out millennia ago because they evolved on a world that actively tries to murder them on a daily basis. And yet, here we are. The delegation had arrived 3 days before the incident. Standard diplomatic protocol. The Therasskan government had requested mediators for their ongoing territorial dispute with the Kalari Confederacy. Nothing unusual about that. Border conflicts are as common in our galaxy as hydrogen atoms. What was unusual was the inclusion of a human representative. Her name was Sergeant Major Diana Okonkwo, retired. She had been added to our delegation at the last moment, some kind of new cultural exchange initiative. I had protested this decision through the proper channels, naturally. Humans had only been members of the galactic community for 8 standard cycles. They had no business being involved in high-stakes negotiations between 2 species who had been at each other's throats for centuries. But the Assembly had overruled me. Something about fresh perspectives and innovative approaches. Fresh perspectives. Diana was 57 years old, by human reckoning, which apparently made her ancient by their standards. Her hair had gone completely white, which she wore cropped close to her skull. She walked with a slight limp, the result of what she called an old war injury. When I asked which war, she simply smiled and said, "All of them. Humans." So dramatic. The Therasskan are a draconic species, if you can imagine such a thing. They evolved from apex predators on a high-gravity world, which gave them dense bones, powerful muscles, and the rather inconvenient ability to breathe controlled jets of superheated plasma. Their scales come in various shades of emerald and sapphire. Their eyes burn like molten copper, and their wingspan can reach nearly 15 meters when fully extended. They are, in short, exactly the kind of species you do not want to annoy. Their lead negotiator was Ambassador Kythren Starfire, a senior diplomat with impeccable credentials and a reputation for being reasonable by Therasskan standards, which meant she had only incinerated 3 people during her career, all of them during legitimate duels. The negotiations were going well, actually. 3 days of careful back and forth, concessions and counter-concessions. The border would be adjusted, trade routes would be shared. Both sides would save face. And then the ceiling collapsed. Later, we learned it was sabotage. Someone had planted explosives in the support structure above the chamber. A faction opposed to peace, angry that their government was backing down from a fight. Politics. It always comes back to politics. But in the moment, all I knew was thunder and fire and chaos. No, wait. I am not supposed to use that word. Let me try again. All I knew was thunder and fire and confusion. The blast threw me across the room. I am a Kythrian, which means I have excellent regenerative capabilities, but even so the impact with the far wall left me dazed and bleeding from several places I would rather not mention in polite company. When I finally managed to focus my visual organs, the scene before me was catastrophic. The chamber was destroyed, chunks of stone and metal everywhere. Dust so thick I could barely see. Emergency alarms screaming in 3 different languages. And in the center of it all, Ambassador Kythren Starfire. She was pinned under a massive support beam that must have weighed several tons. Her wings were crumpled beneath her, bent at angles that made my stomach lurch. Her rear legs were completely buried under rubble, and her scales, those beautiful emerald scales, were cracked and bleeding in a dozen places. But the worst part, the truly terrible part, was her eyes. They were still conscious, still aware, still filled with the kind of terror that comes from being completely and utterly helpless. Please, she whispered. Her voice was barely audible over the alarms. Please, I cannot walk or fly. I cannot move. Someone, anyone, please help me. I tried to stand. I really did. But my legs would not cooperate. The Kalari delegate next to me was unconscious, maybe dead. The Therasskan guards were either buried or frantically trying to dig themselves out, and the structural damage was spreading. I could hear more of the ceiling cracking above us. We were all going to die in that room. And then Diana moved. She had been on the far side of the chamber when the explosion hit, near the entrance. She should have run. Any sane being would have run. The building was collapsing, aftershocks were still rumbling through the foundation, and there was a very real possibility of secondary explosions. Instead, this mad human walked directly into the worst of it. Not ran, walked, with that slight limp of hers, like she was strolling through a garden rather than a active destruction zone. Ambassador, Diana called out. Her voice was calm, unnervingly calm. Can you hear me? Kythren turned her head with obvious difficulty. Her neck scales were cracked, I noticed. Probably fractured vertebrae. Human, what are you doing? Get out of here. Save yourself. Diana ignored this completely. She knelt beside the massive beam pinning Kythren down and examined it with the kind of careful attention a scientist might give to an interesting specimen. Then she looked at the rubble covering Kythren's rear legs, then the crumbling ceiling above them. Right, Diana said. Here is what is going to happen. I am going to lift this beam. When I do, you need to drag yourself forward with your front legs, just a meter or two. Can you do that? Kythren stared at her like she had grown a second head. Lift it? Human? That beam weighs at least 3,000 kilograms. Your species cannot possibly possess that kind of strength. You are correct, Diana agreed. Normally I could not lift it, but I am not going to lift it normally. She stood up and began removing her jacket. Then her shirt. Underneath she was wearing some kind of form-fitting garment, black and sleek, that covered her from neck to wrists to waist. I had never seen anything like it. Kythren's eyes went wide. What is that? Diana smiled. That strange, cryptic human smile that could mean anything. This is a Class 4 exoskeletal enhancement suit. Military grade. It was fused to my nervous system about 20 years ago after I took some shrapnel to the spine. She tapped a spot on her forearm, and suddenly I could see it. Thin lines running beneath her skin, glowing faintly blue. An entire mechanical framework integrated into her biology. I felt my throat go dry. Or the Vithrian equivalent of that sensation anyway. The humans had cybernetic enhancements. Of course they did. We had known this on some level, seen it in their medical files. But knowing something intellectually and seeing it in action are two very different things. The suit compensates for the nerve damage, Diana continued. Keeps me walking, keeps me functional. But it also has an emergency mode. The strength amplification drains the power cells in about 90 seconds, so I only have one shot at this. She positioned herself beside the beam and gripped it with both hands. Ambassador, when I say go, you move. Understood? Kythren nodded. Her eyes were still terrified, but now there was something else there too. Something like hope. Diana closed her eyes, took a breath. And then the lines beneath her skin blazed brilliant blue. The beam moved. It should not have moved. The physics did not work. A human, even an augmented one, should not have been able to shift 3,000 kilograms of collapsed support structure, but the beam moved. It rose. Not much, maybe half a meter, but enough. Go, Diana growled through gritted teeth. Now. Kythren moved. She dragged herself forward with her front legs, claws scraping against stone, scales grinding against debris. It was agonizing to watch. Every centimeter clearly cost her tremendous pain. But she moved, and then the ceiling gave way. I saw it happening. A massive chunk of stone directly above where Diana was standing. It was going to crush her. There was no time to dodge, no way to avoid it. Diana saw it too, and she did not move. She held that beam, held it while the stone fell toward her, held it while Kythren dragged herself those final precious centimeters to safety. The stone hit Diana square across the shoulders. She went down. The beam dropped. And for one horrible moment, I thought that was it. That this insane human had just sacrificed herself for a dragon she had known for 3 days. Then I saw her hand move. Just her fingers, really, twitching in the rubble. But it was enough. She was alive. The rescue teams arrived 12 minutes later. They dug us out, stabilized Kythren, and extracted Diana from under half a ton of debris. Her exoskeleton had taken the brunt of the impact. The framework was completely destroyed, fused circuits and shattered polymers all through her back and shoulders. Without it, the medics said, she would never walk again. She smiled at that news. Actually smiled. Worth it, she whispered. Then she lost consciousness. That was 4 days ago. I am writing this from the medical station orbiting Therasskan Prime, where both Diana and Ambassador Kythren are recovering. The negotiations have been paused, obviously. The peace talks will resume once both parties are well enough to participate. But something has already changed. I saw it in Kythren's eyes when she woke up. When she learned what Diana had done. When she understood that a human, one of those soft, fragile, absurd little creatures, had chosen to cripple herself rather than let a dragon die. The Therasskan ambassador asked me a question yesterday. She asked me what kind of species produces individuals like that. I told her I did not know. But I intend to find out. 3 weeks have passed since the collapse of the negotiation chamber, and I am beginning to suspect that humans are not a species at all. They are a phenomenon, a force of nature disguised as bipedal mammals with questionable fashion sense and an inexplicable fondness for fermented plant beverages. Let me explain what I mean by that. Diana Okonkwo has been confined to a medical pod for 22 days. Her exoskeletal enhancement suit, the device that allowed her to walk and move and function like a normal being, is completely destroyed. The neural interfaces are fused. The power cells are ruptured. The framework itself is so badly damaged that the Therasskan medical technicians initially thought it was part of the building debris rather than part of her body. She should be devastated. She should be grieving. She should be at minimum extremely concerned about her future mobility and quality of life. Instead, she has been holding court. That is the only way I can describe it. Every day from her medical pod, Diana receives visitors. Therasskan officials, Kalari delegates, medical staff, maintenance workers, security personnel. Anyone who wants to speak with her, she welcomes, and she talks to them. Really talks. Not the careful, measured diplomatic speech that I have spent my entire career perfecting. No. She tells them stories about Earth, about her military service, about her family, her childhood, her favorite foods, her worst mistakes. She told one Therasskan guard about the time she accidentally set her kitchen on fire trying to make something called a grilled cheese sandwich. She told a Kalari medic about her daughter's wedding, and how she cried so hard during the ceremony that she could not see the vow. She told Ambassador Kythren about her late husband, a man named Tobias, who died in something called a car accident 30 years ago, and how she still talks to him sometimes when she thinks no one is listening. She is, in short, being aggressively human at everyone she meets. And it is working. I do not understand how it is working, but it is working. Ambassador Kythren visits Diana's medical pod every single day, sometimes twice. They talk for hours about everything and nothing. Politics, philosophy, food, art, the proper way to raise children. Kythren has 3 clutchlings back on Therasskan Prime. Diana has 2 adult children and 4 grandchildren on Earth. They compare notes on parenting with the intensity of generals planning a military campaign. Yesterday I overheard Kythren laughing. Do you understand how significant that is? The Therasskan diplomats do not laugh. They are trained from hatching to maintain emotional composure in all situations. I have seen Kythren negotiate ceasefires while standing in a burning building. I have watched her deliver speeches while assassins were actively trying to kill her. Not once did she so much as smile. But Diana told her some ridiculous story about human children and something called a science fair project involving baking soda and vinegar, and Kythren laughed so hard that plasma vented from her nostrils and nearly set the medical pod on fire. The nurses were not pleased, but here is the thing that truly concerns me. The thing that keeps me awake at night, staring at the ceiling of my quarters and questioning everything I thought I knew about galactic diplomacy. The peace talks are going better than ever. Not just better, spectacularly better. Issues that had been contentious for months are being resolved in single sessions. Territorial disputes that should have taken years to negotiate are being settled in days. The Kalari Confederacy has made concessions that would have been unthinkable 3 weeks ago. The Therasskan government has offered compromises that their own military advisors called dangerously generous. And everyone keeps talking about Diana. That is what she did. They say, that is what she sacrificed. If a human can do that for someone she barely knows, surely we can find a way to compromise on a trade route. She has become a symbol, an example, a standard against which everyone is measuring their own behavior. I find this deeply irritating on a professional level. I have spent 43 years learning the subtle arts of diplomatic manipulation, the careful application of pressure and release, the delicate balance of threat and incentive. I am very good at my job. And this human, this ridiculous, reckless, self-destructive human, has accomplished more in 3 weeks of lying in a medical pod than I have in 4 decades of active negotiation. It is enough to make a seasoned diplomat consider early retirement. But I digress. Let me tell you about what happened yesterday, because that is when I finally began to understand. The medical team had been working on a solution to Diana's mobility problem. Therasskan biotechnology is advanced, certainly, but it is designed for Therasskan physiology. Integrating it with human nervous systems presented significant challenges. There was talk of shipping her back to Earth for treatment, which would have taken months. Then Ambassador Kythren made an announcement. She called a formal assembly of the Therasskan High Council, the Kalari Confederate Senate, and all members of the diplomatic delegation. Full ceremonial protocol, traditional robes, ritual incense, the whole elaborate production. I assumed she was going to deliver some kind of formal statement about the peace negotiations, perhaps announce a breakthrough, or call for a temporary recess. I was wrong. She walked to the center of the chamber, spread her wings to their full magnificent span, and declared that the Therasskan people owed Diana Okonkwo a blood debt. The room went absolutely silent. Blood debts are serious business among the Therasskan. They are ancient obligations, sacred bonds that transcend politics and diplomacy. A blood debt means that the debtor will do anything, sacrifice anything, to repay what is owed. They are not declared lightly. In fact, they are almost never declared toward non-Therasskan beings. There are maybe a dozen cases in recorded history. Until yesterday, there was 0 involving humans. Kythren explained her reasoning with the kind of cold, precise logic that Therasskan are famous for. Diana Okonkwo saved my life, she said. She did so knowing that it would cost her the ability to walk. She did so without hesitation, without negotiation, without any expectation of reward. She did so because it was the right thing to do. Kythren's voice grew harder, more intense. The Therasskan people pride ourselves on courage, she continued. We believe that we are the bravest species in the galaxy. We tell stories of our ancestors facing impossible odds and emerging victorious. We teach our hatchlings that fear is weakness and that true Therasskan never back down from a challenge. She paused, looked around the chamber. But how many of us would do what Diana did? How many of us would sacrifice our mobility, our independence, our future, for a stranger, for someone we had known only 3 days? No one answered. No one could answer. That is why I am declaring a blood debt, Kythren finished. Because Diana Okonkwo has shown us what courage truly looks like, and it looks nothing like what we thought. The Therasskan High Council approved the declaration unanimously. Then they went further. They committed their finest bioengineers to the task of developing a new exoskeletal system for Diana, not a repair of her old one. A completely new design incorporating Therasskan materials and human neural interface technology. It will be better than her original system. Stronger, faster, more efficient. The lead engineer told me it will probably make her the most physically capable human currently alive. I asked him how long the development would take. He looked at me like I had asked a stupid question. As long as it takes, he said. Blood debts are not constrained by timelines. I went to see Diana after the assembly. I wanted to tell her what had happened, in case no one else had informed her. I wanted to see her reaction. She already knew, of course. Kythren had told her personally, before making the public announcement. Diana was sitting up in her medical pod, looking out the window at Therasskan's prime hanging in the void below. Her white hair was slightly disheveled. There were dark circles under her eyes, but she was smiling. "Counselor Vethric," she said when she saw me. "Come in. Sit down. I understand you have questions." "I do," I admitted. I sat in the chair beside her. "Pod. I have many questions, but I think they all come down to one." She nodded. "Go ahead." I leaned forward. "Why? Why did you do it? You knew what it would cost you. You knew you might never walk again. You barely knew Ambassador Kythren. So why did you sacrifice yourself for her?" Diana was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed. Softly but genuinely. "Counselor," she said. "You are asking the wrong question." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "The question is not why I did it," Diana explained. "The question is why I would not do it." She looked at me with those strange, dark human eyes. A person was dying. I could help. What else was I supposed to do? "But the cost," I protested. "Your mobility, your independence, your future." Diana shrugged. "Futures can be rebuilt. Mobility can be restored." She gestured at the medical pod around her. "Apparently, the Therasskan are very good at that sort of thing. But you did not know that at the time," I pressed. "When you made the decision to help Kythren, you thought you were giving up your ability to walk forever." Diana nodded. "Yes, I did." "And you did it anyway?" "Yes." I sat back in my chair. I did not understand. I genuinely, truly did not understand. In 43 years of diplomatic service, I have learned that every action has a motive, every sacrifice has a price, every kindness has an agenda. But Diana was not lying. I am very good at detecting lies, and she was telling the absolute truth. She had sacrificed herself for no reason. No political advantage, no personal gain, no strategic benefit. Just because someone was hurt and she could help. "Counselor," Diana said gently, "I think you are overcomplicating this." "Explain it to me then," I demanded. "Explain it in terms I can understand." She considered this for a moment. Then she smiled. "On Earth," she said, "we have a saying. It goes like this. You save the people you can save." She let that hang in the air. "It does not matter if they are strangers," she continued. "It does not matter if they are different from you. It does not matter if helping them will hurt you. If you can save someone, you save them, because that is what people do for each other. That is what makes us people." I did not respond. I could not respond. My throat had closed up. Diana reached out and patted my hand. It was a strange gesture, very human, oddly comforting. "I know you think humans are reckless," she said. "Impulsive, self-destructive, and maybe we are. But here is the secret, Counselor. We are not brave because we do not feel fear. We are brave because we feel it all the time and we do the right thing anyway." She looked back out the window at the Therasskan Prime. "That is what separates courage from stupidity," she finished. "Courage is being afraid and acting anyway. Stupidity is not being afraid at all." I left her room shortly after that. I needed time to process what she had said, what she had shown me, what I was beginning to understand about humanity. The peace treaty was signed 3 days later. Full territorial agreement, shared trade routes, mutual defense pact, cultural exchange programs. The most comprehensive peace agreement between the Therasskan and the Kalari in over 200 years. Ambassador Kythren gave a speech at the signing ceremony. She talked about cooperation and compromise and the importance of finding common ground. But she ended with something different. She said that true strength is not measured in firepower or territory. True strength is measured in the willingness to sacrifice for others, in the courage to act when action is needed. in the simple, profound decision to help someone who is hurt, even when it cost you everything. She said that the Therasskan people had learned this lesson from an unlikely source, a small, fragile, utterly remarkable human who reminded them what honor truly meant. Then she looked at Diana, who was watching from the front row in a temporary mobility chair, and she bowed. A Therasskan ambassador, bowing to a human. The entire chamber followed suit. I am writing this report 6 weeks after the collapse of the negotiation chamber. Diana's new exoskeletal system is nearly complete. The engineers tell me she will be walking again within the month, running within 2, and probably doing things that no human has ever done before within the year. She is already planning her next assignment, some kind of humanitarian mission to a famine-struck colony in the outer systems. She wants to help distribute food and medical supplies. Because of course she does. I have submitted a formal recommendation to the Galactic Diplomatic Assembly. I have proposed that we increase human involvement in all future high-stakes negotiations. Not because they are skilled diplomats, although some of them certainly are, but because they remind us of something important. They remind us why we do this work in the first place. Peace is not just about borders and trade routes and strategic advantages. Peace is about people, about protecting them, helping them, saving them when we can. Humans understand this instinctively. It is built into their biology, their culture, their very souls. The rest of us could stand to learn from their example. This is Councillor Vethric of the Galactic Diplomatic Assembly, signing off. And may whatever gods you believe in help us all if we ever give humans a reason to be our enemies. Because if they fight for strangers like this, I shudder to think what they would do for friends.